Hello! So if you're watching this, you're probably either thinking of getting rats for yourself, or your kids are pestering you to get rats and you're not sure if it's the right decision or not, but you've come to the right place. I want to talk about whether I think personally rats make good pets for kids or not. Now this is just my personal opinion based on my experience with rats. I have had rats for a while, and although I don't personally have kids, I do get a lot of comments from kids either not being allowed to get rats, or they have got rats and their parents aren't allowing them or helping them to care for them properly. I've seen that whole side of it too, so I feel like I've got enough information to share the pros and the cons. Now, I always get asked by kids or young people to make a video on how to persuade your parents to let you get rats or mice or whatever animal, and I just won't do it. I don't think it's fair, because if your parent is saying no for whatever reason, or they're not entirely sure, I don't think it's the right time to get rats or any pet. It has to be your parents' decision. They have to also want to get that animal, so I'm not going to make that kind of video, but we are making this one today. So on one hand, yes, there are many reasons rats would make amazing pets for kids. Rats have been raised well and bred to have good temperaments from reputable breeders, can be and usually are very friendly and easy to handle, and that does make them really interactive and friendly pets for kids. They're also a good size for kids compared to other small pets you might be considering, things like hamsters and mice that are smaller and a lot more fragile. Rats are a decent size, especially male rats like Pudding here. He is a lot larger than most rats, but you've got more to hold on to, more to cuddle with, and it's a lot easier for kids to handle. Something of this size compared to something smaller like a hamster or a mouse. Rats also don't have the longest lifespan, which of course in itself is a con, but compared to other pets you or your kids might be considering, things like reptiles, bearded dragons, leopard geckos, snakes, these can live 10, 20 years, and if you're getting this when you're 11, you have no idea what your life is going to look like when you're 21 or 31. You have no idea if you can still have that reptile. So many reptiles end up in rehoming centres or needing homes, so sometimes having a pet with a shorter lifespan can be a plus. Most rats will adapt to your routine or your schedule, but rats are naturally crepuscular, and this means they mostly wake during dawn and dusk. And I get a lot of kids worried about if their rats will be bored or okay or lonely when they're at school, and as long as they have that social company of other rats, which they should do anyway, they'll be fine. They'll mostly sleep whilst you're gone and be awake before you go to school, and then also when you get home too. So compared to other pets like hamsters that are very nocturnal, rats will be awake and there for you when you're awake too. Rats are also very intelligent, and again, no shade to species like hamsters, but when you've owned both you will notice the difference. Rats are so fun to train, especially for older children. Training them to do things like tricks can be so rewarding. They can also be really emotionally intelligent too, and some people find them to be particularly good with children or a lot more gentle with children, and they can also be really good for mental health. If your kids are struggling with their mental health, or they're being bullied at school, having a pet that's really receptive and really interactive can really help. Rats are also very curious in nature, and although they might be a bit fearful when you first get them and bring them home, depending on where you got them from, rats have been raised in a good home with lots of noises and different situations. Things like dogs and children generally do a lot better in a busy household compared to other pets. They're a lot more of a prey species like hamsters and mice. They tend to be a lot bolder and fit quite well into a variety of different households and situations. And lastly, they are so entertaining. Rats will give you hours and hours of fun and entertainment, running around causing chaos, and I feel like there's a lot more you can do with rats compared to other small pets. You can do things like training them to do agility, you can do pea fishing with them, you can set different things up in the room and make different toys and activities. There are so many things you can do with your rats that's really fun for children and also adults too. So moving on to reasons that I don't think rats make good pets for kids. The first one is not all rats are going to enjoy being handled. Some rats are quite quick and fast and squirmy, and this can be quite tricky for kids or quite disappointing for them, especially if you get rats from a place like a pet store where they've probably never been handled or not handled very much in the first 8 to 12 weeks of their life. And that is a really important time for socialising them and handling them, and also they've not really been bred to have a good friendly temperament, so this can be quite tricky. And also female rats can be a lot quicker, a lot more squirmy. Some of them just want to go, run around, do rat things, and not want to sit there and be squeezed or cuddled. So for that reason, I don't always make the best pets for kids, because not all rats enjoy being handled, and I wouldn't get them just for the idea that they might sit there with you, because not all rats are going to do that. As I mentioned before, rats also live very short lives of around 2 years old, and this does come with health issues, and this can be very upsetting and hard for kids to grasp, and also quite costly, and not all parents are willing to take their kids' pets to the vets. If you're not willing to spend a couple of £100 or dollars at a time on your kids' rats, then please don't get them, because it is going to happen at least once in their lifespan. They are quite prone to various different health issues, and you can't just leave them. You can't upset your kids and traumatize them by not allowing them to take their rats to the vets. It's also not fair to expect a 9-year-old, for example, who's still learning about the world, to be the sole carer of those rats and spot things like mites or pyometra, glaucoma, prolapses, misaligned teeth. It's up to an adult to check for these things and be proactive in the rats' lives. The biggest thing probably that puts me off recommending rats as pets for small children is the behavioural issues and the behavioural problems. Now, most rats are going to be really good and never bite anyone in their entire life, but it is possible, especially when they experience things like hormonal aggression. This can and it does pop up, and I don't want to scare anyone with this, but it is a lot to deal with. Around about 4 to 6 months old, rats, especially male rats, can start to experience something called hormonal aggression, and this can either come out in them fighting their cage mates and injuring the other rats in the cage, or with biting you. So this isn't ideal to have when there's children around, and I don't want to scare anyone or put anyone off, but it is a reality that sometimes happens. I am permanently scarred on my hand from a rat biting me. Other people in rare cases have it so much worse. There's people that have been bitten down to the bone and the tendons, so it is something to be aware of, that it can happen, and adults need to look out for this. If this happens, you have to neuter them to try to fix the problem, and again, this is up to an adult to pay for and take them. I can't tell you how many upset kids I've had in my comments because they know rats shouldn't be living alone and they can't physically drive them to the vets, or they don't have the money to pay for the surgery to have them spayed or neutered, and they're really upset. So everyone has to be on board. Another con is if you're a kid keeping them in your bedroom. They can keep you awake at night. They make various different noises, just moving around or having scuffles, or drinking from the water bottle is the worst noise known to man. It's so irritating. So that's obviously not good if you have school the next day or you've got an exam the next day and they're keeping you awake. Also, the smell, as much as you try to keep on top of this, sometimes there is a smell, and this can be really irritating to kids, and especially kids that have sensory issues that are quite sensitive to bad smells. They also do require a fairly large cage, so it might not be suitable for squeezing somewhere into your kid's bedroom. A lot of people will start with a starter cage that isn't suitable and then realise they don't actually have space unless they get rid of some furniture for a big suitable rat cage, so that is definitely something to keep in mind. The social side of owning rats is a massive commitment and something that a lot of kids and parents think about or plan for, and I'd probably say it's one of the bigger reasons up there that I wouldn't recommend rats as pets for kids, because it's where a lot of rats tend to suffer and kids also get upset. If you have a pair of rats and one of those rats dies, you either have to get more rats or rehome that last rat to live socially with other rats, and this can cause a lot of conflict between parents and kids because oftentimes the kids have done their research and they know it's cruel to house that rat by itself. The parents are saying, no, I don't want to get any more rats, but they're also not allowing them to rehome that rat. So this just ends up with a rat by itself and ultimately suffering. So although initially you might have thought, okay, I'll just get my kids just these 2 rats, it is a lot more of a long-term commitment and a constant cycle of getting new rats that you might not have anticipated. So would I recommend rats as small pets for children? For very small children, no, but for young teens, for example, that can understand responsibility, they can rationalise putting their rat's needs above their own, they know not to stick their fingers in the bars, and they can look out for certain health or behavioural issues, then yes. But, and this is the most important part, parents still have to be involved and on board. You are legally responsible for these animals, not the person who is under 18, and it should be a family effort. Children who are left to be solely responsible for their pets often end up traumatised when their rats are struggling and they can't afford to help them. Don't be that person. Also, your kids can promise you until they're blue in the face they won't get bored of their rats if they get them, and the sad reality is there's so many rats out there right now in rescues or in selling sites, and 90% of the descriptions are my kids are bored of them, or my kids have lost interest and they're not caring for them and we have to get rid of them. So please think about this before bringing them home. For that reason only, I would recommend only getting rats if you yourself are interested and willing to care for them. If you're considering rats for younger children, and you can be the one cleaning them out, giving them medication, treating wounds, introducing them to other rats, this can be quite a complicated and sometimes risky process that I would not want just a child doing. For older children or teenagers, as a parent, are you prepared to care for their rats if they go out with friends, or when they go away to college or university and they can't take their rats with them? Are you prepared to rehome the last rat and drive them to where they need to get to? If the answer to any of these is no, then I don't think rats are the right pet for you or your family. I understand if any of this was not what you wanted to hear, especially for my younger viewers, but my priorities always lie with the rats. They are sentient, intelligent animals that deserve to be brought into the right home, and I would hate for anyone to make the wrong decision. But those are my thoughts on whether I think rats make good pets for kids or not. I hope if you're watching this as a parent and you've maybe been on the fence, it's helped you make your decision a bit clearer. And don't get me wrong, rats are amazing pets for the right people, and I think as a parent you'll be surprised just how much you come to love them too, and how much fun you'll have interacting with them, because they are amazing pets. But I hope this has been helpful. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye! Also, if you do decide to get rats after doing your research, be fully prepared, of course, for all of the ignorant comments you might get from people in your life, but also just how much rats will consume your entire life and become your entire personality. They will take over your house. You'll probably start wearing things like rat socks or rat-themed slippers, but just embrace it.